I want to explore this Zelom for a moment to show you the range, the broad character of how the various biblical interpreters have interpreted this term. This is out of the Bilingual Dictionary of the Hebrew and Aramaic Old Testament by Ludwig Kohler and Walter Baumgartner. This is on page 804. They say the Zelom is the Nachbildung, the Abbild. That is the image or the copy. It is the Bildniszeichnung, the image or the drawing. They say it is the build, the image. It means physical, something physical. That's out of their dictionary. Now, Rashi, in his commentary on Genesis, see if I've got this marked right. I wanted to mark this earlier. This is where he says, Vayivra Elohim et ha-adam betzalmo betzelem Elohim bara oto zakar unekeva bara otam. That is, God created man in His image. In the image of God, He created him. Now he says the Betzelmo is in our image. And Rashi says this means in our mold. Rashi interpreted it to mean the mold of God. Because he didn't feel God had form. Which is fascinating. Because the Hebrew is clear. It is physical. And in terms of that, now one of the most important, I study a lot of the Kabbalah. And I study the Zohar and the Sefer Yetzirah and the Bahir, the main Kabbalistic text. The Zohar is going to take me the rest of my life just to get through once. Sensational. I've got the 23-volume Aramaic English edition from the Kabbalah Center, and then I'm collecting as they come out Daniel Matt's translation of the Zohar. And I've started writing a commentary on the Zohar. It's on my other blog, my Backyard Professor blog, but I have so much else I want to do. I love making these videos for one thing, but I'll get back on to my Zohar commentary. But one of the most important elucidating texts on the Kabbalah is Gershom Scholem. It was his last book before he died, on the mystical shape of the Godhead. A very important text on the Kabbalah. Very beautifully done. He notes on page 17, he says, the Torah at Genesis 1:26-27 and at chapter 9 verse 6 uses only in connection with the creation of man, and which in a certain sense is the key term for all anthropomorphic discussions of God, Zelom. Zelom Elohim, the image of God. The Hebrew word Zelom refers to a three-dimensional image or form. When God says, let us make man in our image, Zelom, after our likeness, and the following verse says, in the Zelom of God he created him, man as a physical plastic phenomenon is placed in relationship to the primal shape reproduced in him, whatever that shape might be. God, therefore, must have something like an image and a likeness. The Hebrew word is demut, for the likeness of his own. This image and likeness of God is not an object of cultic veneration, but is something that defines the essence of man, even in his physicality. This notion of Zelom as the likeness of a heavenly, although not necessarily corporeal structure, undergoes all the stages of interpretation and reinterpretation required by the desire for an ever stronger emphasis on divine transcendence and the conception of God as pure spirit. It changed. It is originally a three-dimensional image or form. It is physical. And it is why it is used. I know he says it defines the essence of man even in his physicality, and he says that it's not a corporeal structure, but we are. and we are after the image of what is corporeal. In relation to that, is the incredibly important and huge, mammoth, 10 volumes, every one of them are 1,000 pages, the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, edited by Gerhard Kittel. In Volume 2, the Septuagint, the Greek Old Testament, called the LXX for 70, that's what Septuagint means. On this Greek word, icon, the Greek word is E-I-K-O-N, icon, for this image. This is the equivalent of the Hebrew tselem. The icon is important to understand in Genesis 1, 1 through 2, and then 4b. The tendency is to separate God from the creature. Instead of direct action, the word of command is enough to call forth the creatures. In the creation of man, however, now we come to the exception. Oh, this is on page 390 in Volume 2. In the creation of man, however, there is a significant change. In Genesis 1:28, we have the technical term for constructing out of a material. The word is bara. We construct out of a material, so that by origin, man is brought into a direct relationship with God. And on page 391, they say, man is designated as a creature whose being is not from below, but who belongs by nature to the upper region. In Genesis 5, 1 and 2 and 3, reference is made to the physical progeny of the first man, Adam, and it is said of Seth, his son, Adam's son, that he was begotten in the image and likeness of Adam. This statement is most important. I want you to get this. It ensures the theological actuality for all generations of the witness to the divine likeness. In relation to the particular question, Genesis chapter 5 verse 3 tells us that the transmission of the divine likeness is thought of in terms of the physical sequence of generations, and therefore obviously in a physical sense. The second passage in Genesis 9 verse 6, where the prohibition of murder is grounded in the divine likeness, here the thought is the same. Attack on man's body is violation of God's honor. I think that is extremely strong. Theological Dictionary of the New Testament. I got all 10 volumes, actually, I got all 10 volumes on a trade-in at a used bookstore, so I basically stole them, and no, I don't feel guilty about that. They were $187.50 otherwise. I went and took a whole bunch of old books from my library and threw them at him. Now, and this is another set of texts, the 3-volume edition, the Theological Lexicon of the New Testament. This is in Volume 1. This is by Cecilus Spick, S-P-I-C-Q. I've never heard his name pronounced. I'm going to call it Spick. It wouldn't be Spick-Q. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. 1994. This is Volume 1. Under the idea of icon. In the Septuagint, icon's dominant nuance is representation, reproduction, figure. The images of the tumors, and is sometimes used in an artistic sense. An artisan casts a statue. The Hebrew word is pesel in that sense. On page 414, oh, my dog's howling, the fire engine must have went by. Given that the sovereign, such as Ptolemy Epiphanes, is the living image of Zeus, son of Helios, numerous statues are raised. The Greek is taston basilion ikonos. They are placed in the temples where they function in the cult. At Athens, during the imperial period, there was a Zakharos, a religious official. This is a kind of a sacristan in charge of the images of the emperors, the ton theon ikonon. That is, their portraits, or more precisely, their busts